All right, have you guys heard about all the changes about ready to happen here on August 17th because of the National Association of Realtors settlement? Well, if you haven't, or you're maybe not sure you understand it, stick around because in today's video, Eric and I are going to go over 5 things that you will need to know about this NAR settlement, and we're getting after it right now. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in the greater Portland metro area, make sure you click that subscribe button, tap that notification bell so that you can be the first to know about everything in the Portland area. We're your go-to gals. This is Erica Hagfors. I'm Ann Stewart. And if you are making a move, please reach out to us. All of our contact information is in the description below. We'd love to connect with you and help you make that move out to the Portland area. All right, so you've probably heard something on the news at this point. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you think you understand it. Maybe you've heard some things and you're like, what? Doesn't make any sense. But we're gonna try to make clarity of it today, right, Erica?
Yeah, we're gonna share the deets on what's happening with the settlement, what it means for you going forward. So I would say, what's the date? I mean, there's a date looming in the future. That date, August 17th. That's when all of these changes are going to go into effect, and you are basically going to need to know, or you will be educated at that time as to what these changes are if you're not watching or haven't watched this video yet.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are surprised at these changes, or they haven't really heard about how they're going to affect things, because we meet with new clients all the time and we're helping them understand what this looks like as we move forward. But the first thing to know is it will be illegal for a real estate agent anywhere in the country to show you a house, one house or multiple homes, without signing what we call a buyer service agreement. So that's number one. Buyer service agreement must be signed prior to looking and viewing any homes.
Now, there are going to be a couple of different options when it comes to buyer service agreements. There may be a single property buyer service agreement, or maybe you sign something that's only a week in length. But just know, like Ann said, you will have to sign something, and that's just an agreement. So like if you sign a buyer service agreement for one house and you decide to write on that house, you're working with that agent. So choose wisely, do some research ahead of time. We've always said, you know, your 2 first steps when it comes to purchasing a house should have always been speaking with a lender and speaking with a real estate professional. You want to know who's representing you up front. So don't think that if you go and sign a buyer service agreement just to go see the house that you can then go and write an offer with somebody else. That is not how it's going to work. That agent that you sign an agreement with could take you to court and say, hey, no, that was supposed to be with me. That's my commission. So, do some due diligence up front. If there's a property that you want to, or if you want to start looking, make sure that you've got established who you're working with.
Yeah, and we've always done what we call buyer consultations. It's basically like a 2-way interview process to make sure we can meet the buyer's goals, as well as help them understand what the market's doing, how we work, how we can work together.
What the buying process looks like too.
And the costs associated with it, which this is the biggest thing you guys need to be aware of. The buyer service agreement is much like a listing agreement. When you go to list your house with an agent, you're agreeing to hire them to market your home and sell your home. And there is a fee. With them.
With
one
them.
person. Same with the buyer. It's always been a little bit loosey-goosey when it comes to the buyer side. You could go out and go online, poke a button, and some random agent would be there to show the house to you. That's no longer going to be what's happening.
No.
Now you need to do a buyer interview, buyer consultation with a buyer's agent to decide if they're a good fit for you. And in that buyer service agreement, it will talk about the length of the agreement. It will talk about the buyer agent compensation, how they're going to get paid. It will be responsible on the buyer to pay the buyer agent, unless as you negotiate on your sales process to have the seller compensate the buyer agent during that process. But those are all things going to be covered at the time of a buyer service agreement consultation. But just understand what you're signing, because there will be situations out there where you're going to meet an agent and you're going to think, well, I don't necessarily know them and I don't know if I want them to represent me, but I sure want to get into that house that they have either listed or that they have that you have, they have a house that they can say, hey, I can get you in, but I need you to sign this document right here.
Yeah.
So make sure you know what that is, because you are signing up to be represented by that agent and compensating that agent.
And something else to think about when you're going through this process is you are still going to be able to go onto some of these platforms and the Zillows and the Redfins and click that show me now button, they are still going to require you to sign something. And again, it may seem harmless that you're like, I can just sign it for this property, but you're going to need to know how long does that service agreement last, because you might not have the time to let it expire. It's going to be more important, more than ever, that you know what you're signing, who you're signing with. So yeah, very important. All right, so the number 2 thing to know about is that open houses are still going to be an option. So you're not going to need to be represented to go to an open house. However, that being said, you're still going to probably want representation when you go to write that offer, or if you want to have a private tour of that home. Something I think that would be important to know is that you're not necessarily going to want that listing agent to represent you. They already represent the seller. Now, dual agency is an option. It
in
can
Oregon.
be in Oregon. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'll keep my opinion to myself. But that being said, you want to think of somebody, or you want somebody who's representing you, giving you fiduciary, and making sure that they're working in your best interest. So know that you can still go to open houses without having anything signed, any sort of representation agreement. However, you're still probably going to want to establish who you're working with. Because when you go, let's say you go to an open house and you're like, yeah, this is the one, you don't want to then have to go interview and find the agent that you're going to work with.
Now, there's a little caveat here. So yes, you can go to open houses and it's exempt. They aren't going to make you sign anything to go into an open house. However, a lot of people call off of for sale signs. That could be you. You could be driving through a neighborhood you've always wanted to live in, and all of a sudden you see a for sale sign pop up and you're like, ooh, I want to go see that house. That listing agent will say to you, I need you to sign a buyer service agreement. So that is not exempt. So if the listing agent shows you the house that they have listed, then they're required to have you sign a buyer service agreement. So you may want to slow your row and go hire somebody that's going to represent you, not you and the seller, if dual agency is not something that you want to be involved with. So, and just to clarify, dual agency means one agent's representing the buyer and the seller. And that's usually not what a lot of people want. So make sure you understand those rules, because that is a caveat. And we do see a lot of people calling off signs. But you're okay during an open house, but
not okay off a sign call.
Yeah, and so really the moral of the story is just hire an agent that you want, that you can select. So you're not hurrying up to find an agent when all of a sudden you find the right house. That's just word to the wise. Okay, the third thing is the removal of the buyer agent compensation out of the MLSs. So a lot of people think buyer agent compensation is just going away. It's not going away. It's going to be treated a little differently. So as we mentioned previously, you're going to be signing a buyer service agreement with a buyer's agent that you as the buyer are agreeing to pay their compensation. And you can negotiate that compensation depending on the transaction. However, in the RMLS for 40 some odd years, there has been the fee that the listing side has been willing to pay the buyer agent advertised in the MLS. It's actually public knowledge.
You can actually go on to, again, all these
platforms. As of the time of this video.
As of the time of this video.
Not August 17th.
And see what they were offering. It says, buyer's agent commission, blah, 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 potatoes. And that is going away, which, like it or hate it, it's just the way it's going to be. And it'll be up to your agent to communicate with the other agents to figure out what the seller is offering on the properties that you want to go see.
Yeah, so understand that while this is going away, it doesn't mean that the seller is not willing to compensate the buyer agent compensation. So we're finding in a lot of cases, the sellers are still willing to compensate a buyer's agent as part of a way to negotiate and market their properties. So a lot of buyers have a lot of fear around, oh my gosh, I have to pay my buyer's agent. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe some of it's negotiated. But in most cases, the sellers are still finding it advantageous to market with a buyer agent compensation. This is where your buyer agent that you hire is going to find out from the listing side if there is one being offered, because we no longer will be able to see it. Right now it's public knowledge. You can hop on any of the major conglomerate websites and actually see what the buyer agent compensation is as a consumer, and we can see it obviously in our MLS system, but that will no longer be available for viewing, and it will be more communicated verbally from agent to agent, or in writing an offer and presenting it to the seller and having the seller decide at the time of the offer what they are or aren't willing to compensate the buyer's agent. So it's just going to become a lot more negotiable, but that's one of the bigger changes happening. And so that is why having a buyer broker agreement signed is important, because that ensures that you know the relationship you have with the agent you hire, what they're getting paid, and you can strategize with the agent you hire when you go to write an offer, how you negotiate for compensation.
So the fourth thing to know is that you can negotiate in transactions. So we kind of briefly touched on this. However, it is going to be important to know that you can, negotiate and ask the seller. Maybe the seller's only offering, X potatoes and you want more. You've agreed to a higher percentage with your agent. You can negotiate that. You can ask the seller, say, hey, we want this. This is our offer. But I also want you to cover this gap between what you're offering currently and what I've agreed to pay my agent. So just know, like we've said, everything's a little more negotiable. That may go the other way too, unfortunately, where you take on a little bit more of what you're paying your agent to present a sweeter offer. So again, it's going to work both ways. The games are opening and
Let the games begin.
Let the games begin. But just know that it's going to be a lot more communication between all parties to figure out how that's all going to get taken care of.
And number 5 is buyer agency is not going away.
We're here to stay.
So a lot of people are worried or think, oh, buyer's agents are going by the way of the buffalo. Unfortunately, that is not the case for those people who are thinking that, but it's good to understand that buyer agency is important. Most people use a buyer agent to represent their best interest when they're going out to buy a property. This person is not just there to open the doors, guys. They're there to represent you, negotiate for you. And I would like to point out that it's never been more important to find somebody who actually knows how to negotiate. That is a lost art in many ways. And now that it's going to be ever more important to hire the agent that you're going to be working with exclusively and utilizing them to represent you, understand that the experience behind an agent is never been more important. And in a way, I think it's going to elevate our profession, because we're going to be required to show up a lot more, which I think is great. I know Eric and I have a certain way we like to do business, and we hope other agents follow the same. But buyer agency is important. It's important that you have somebody representing you if you need to negotiate price, terms, repairs. It's a very high intensity negotiation type of transaction.
It's on all levels. I mean, even with new construction, I think so often buyers go into new construction and they talk to the site agent. And the site agents are great. They're super friendly and they give you this like warm, welcoming feel. But you have to remember those agents work for the seller.
Yeah.
And even at every step, your agent should be with you doing your, new home orientation. I know about these homes, but just having another set of eyes on the property so that you can call out things that need to be fixed or ask about things or make sure that, everybody's on the same page.
You just advised a client of ours that is buying new construction to get a sewer scope and a home inspection. A lot of people think you don't need those on new construction.
You need them.
We've seen so many sewer scopes go wrong on new construction.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to talk people into doing something that they don't think they should have to spend money or time on, only to realize they're like, oh my God, the sewer line is like shot on brand new construction.
Yeah.
So it's going, and the other thing too is, we're right now in the thick of repair negotiations on representing a few of our clients, and we're talking like $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of repairs. And that is not something that is easy to do, let alone being the buyer trying to go directly to the seller or just the listing agent to do it. So
something else to consider is that, you hope that you're spending the whatever it is, $400 to $600 on the home inspection, and that yes, it returns nothing. However, there are things that pop up. Like I just had one where it's new construction. Obviously, this is in the summer. It's very dry, and yet we found water on top of the vapor barrier. Now we do have some high water tables, but it's making sure that you have documentation that was a situation when the home was purchased. And then at your inspection, where you're going to have your warranty, your first warranty that comes up, you can say, hey, well, there is still water. That's still an issue. And then you can address it.
Yeah.
But if you wait till that, the end of that first year, you don't know if it's a thing. Did it just pop up, or was it that way when you bought the house? It's just having a third party opinion of the condition and issues with the home, if there are any, up front. That's really all home inspections are. It is a report of condition. There's no pass fail. It's a report of condition of that property at that given time. And you want that on resales and you want it on new construction. So, you know, just make sure that you're working with somebody who really wants to advocate for you. You know, and that should go without saying. Experience and advocacy and fiduciary for the buyer. That is what you are looking for when you're going to hire your agent. And that is just not going to go away because it is such a process. You're buying a big investment. You want to make sure that you have somebody who's looking out for you.
Well, thanks for joining us on this video about the 5 NAR settlement things we felt you should know about. If you have further questions about the settlement or what it means, let us know. Drop your comments below, reach out to us. And if you are looking to make a move and you need buyer representation, we would welcome the opportunity to meet with you on Zoom, talk to you over the phone, shoot us an email, give us a text. Let's set up a time so we can help you make a smooth move to Portland and buy a property that fits your needs. All right, we'll see you on the next video.
That's all, folks.